You're watching TVC Breakfast. Let's get into our discussion now. Attacks on Nigeria correctional centers are becoming more frequent, making many worry about how safe these detention facilities are. This year alone, more than 2,500 inmates have been freed from detention after deadly attacks on correctional centers. On April the 5th, about 1,800 inmates escaped when gunmen attacked and blew up a correctional facility in Imo State. While many of the inmates who escaped in Imo were yet to be captured, gunmen launched another attack on a correctional center in Kogi State on September the 13th. About 240 inmates escaped there. Weeks after, another correctional facility in Oyo State has been attacked by unknown gunmen who set free about 575 inmates. Though some of them have been captured while others turned themselves in, so many are on the run and may never be captured. Security experts say this may worsen the crime rate in the country, as such persons will likely return to crime. They want technology, manpower and finance deployed towards securing correctional facilities in the country. That is the crux of our next discussion now. So I have with me public affairs analyst Dana Kinlami to help us make sense of all of this. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I also have via Zoom a lawyer and founder, Prisoners' Rights Advocacy Initiative, Ahmed Adetola Kazim. Good morning, Ahmed.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Great to see you. All right, let me start with you for obvious reasons, Ahmed. The point there is when it comes to anyone in a prison or a correctional center is a legal issue. It is by law that you are there and you're not supposed to be out until the law says you are supposed to be out. Now, share with us basically, how does anybody who breaks out of prison, how does it compound the legal timing of how someone should be in prison?
Well, if you break out of prison, it's not an automatic issue. The authorities will have to decide what to do. For instance, the prison authorities are saying, or the Nigeria Correctional Service is saying they are giving a window of opportunity for those who have gone out of the prison to return, and if they return, there will be no consequences. So what that means is that if you break out of correctional facilities, it's not automatic that there must be a punishment. And if there's going to be a punishment, there also has to be a judicial process, whether internally or at the court, where the court will now have to pronounce to say you have additional imprisonment time, or the authorities will take it up and give additional imprisonment time. So it's actually at the discretion of the authorities.
All right. In a situation where few persons who have the powers to run with others, but decide to stay back on their own, even though the place is open for them to go, but decide to stay back on their own, is there any consideration for people like that?
Well, yes, there could be consideration, and that is also at the discretion of those in the authorities. You know, there are remission of sentences. They could have opportunities of parole. They could have opportunities of, because what's it called? They could have some level of grace, and that is dependent on what the authorities think. Because sometimes those who are required to spend like 10 years in prison are released before that time. The Prerogative of Mercy Committee can look into these acts. That for him, he actually decided to stay behind when he should have gone out of prison. But unfortunately, that those mostly affected are waiting trial persons. They have not even been convicted. So that adds another dimension to the whole issue. By the end of the day, it's actually at the discretion of the authorities to determine what to do with them. And also their acts, the authorities can also, maybe the prosecutorial authorities can also bring it to the notice of the judge that this particular person, or the counsel, the defense counsel representing them, can actually bring this with facts to say that my client, who has just been convicted, has shown that is responsible, by not joining those who did the jailbreak, by not escaping, and the judge can actually consider this in giving imprisonment or sentence.
All right. We'll come back to you. Let's bring Daniel into this conversation now. Like we read in the last few months, about 2,500 inmates from different prisons have been, broken open and broken loose. Recall also sometime last year, where during the NSAS period, there was also the same, situation where also in Benin and other places. Now, share with us basically how dangerous is this trend, because it seems to be a trend now where we're talking about unknown gunmen. How dangerous is this?
It is seriously dangerous. And if we don't do something quickly, either to reinforce security around our correctional centers or begin to execute reforms that can help us to sustain the essence of these centers, then we have a bigger problem in our hand. First, what this represents is that it erodes away the justice system. You can't have people charged to court, prosecuted, with witnesses against them, and they were eventually sentenced. Some of them are on death row. Some of them have been sentenced to death. And then suddenly, unknown gunmen or some gang of criminals will break in and set them free. So what that represents is the fact that the justice that was eventually set or rolled out to correct some of the defects in the society is being eroded. Don't also forget some of the incidents that happened last year, especially in the prison in Edo State. We've seen incidents of where prison inmates that escaped from prison went back to the society and attacked or killed those people who witnessed against them during their prosecution. So the prison authority right now, even the Ministry of Interior and the minister, need to do something quickly to abate this trend. And one of the aspects where we have to pay attention to is the aspect of security. How come some gunmen will come with some weapons, break into our prison and set people free? We have to do something because we have enough problems in our hands already. There is a problem of terrorism we are facing, banditry. And if we lose control over our prison, over our correctional centers, then we are having something bigger coming to us. So this is very important. We've seen reforms in the past 5 years, but these reforms are also not translating to results. We still have the issue of the congestion in these correctional centers, which is also adding to the pressure and the state of the facility in our correctional centers. We have not even addressed those, so now we have to deal with the prison breaks here and there. So if we have to do something, first, the security of our correctional centers, we have almost about 250 now scattered all over the country. So the people in charge of the service, the correctional service, the Ministry of Interior, they need to do something that is drastic. These are 3 incidents now this year. Starting from the one that happened in Imo State, the one in Kogi, and now in Oyo State. So it should be an embarrassing thing if we wake up tomorrow, another correctional center is broken into. So we need to look at some of the things that's also contributed to this. Look at some of the reforms that happened in the past 3 to 4 years. We haven't seen any tangible results to help decongest even the correctional centers on its own. First, there was the passage of the Administration of Criminal Justice Act in 2015. A lot of people had so much hope that that would have brought in some reform in the service. But till now, that's 6 years, we haven't seen much. There was the passage of Prison Reform Bill in 2019 that changed the name from Nigeria Prison Service to Nigeria Correctional Center.
Exactly.
And there's so many laudable things in that act that would have helped the system, especially the congests. Because if you look at the situation, beyond the security threat we're facing now, the situation of our prisons are terrible. In a prison that we're supposed to have about 802 inmates, we have almost about 4,000. And compounding this issue are a number of people on awaiting trials. The bulk of the people that were released in this correctional center in Agologo in Oyo State are those on awaiting trial. Almost about 900 of them, they're on awaiting trial. Their prosecution has not started. And these are the issues, because when we keep having some of these pressures here and there, the prison, the correctional service alone has so much challenges and problems that we need to face that we should not add the jailbreak to it. We shouldn't even tolerate the jailbreak continuing on this trend,
because it compounds the situation. Now, Ahmed, let me come to you on this, because Dan has talked about the issue of the transformation or the reform that was carried out in the past few years. The point there is, we changed or transited from the Nigerian Prison Service to the Nigerian Correctional Center. I believe it was not just the name change. I believe there were some things that were supposed to change. Share with us, basically, you are in that space. What has really changed with the change from the prison service to correctional centers?
I must say that not much has really changed. Outside the change of the name, not much has been seen. There have been attempts, but you know, when reforms are attempted, it's not just about changing the law. It's also about funding the change. I doubt if there is, in fact, I have on record that the reforms have not been seen. For instance, the Nigeria Correctional Service now has, what's it called? There are two sides to it. You have the custodial and the non-custodial. As we speak, the non-custodial service is yet to kick off. Of course, the officers assigned to that role, but in terms of facilities, in terms of equipment, in terms of, for instance, what the non-custodial would do is that for petty offenses, for instance, those who have alleged to have been committed petty offenses are not meant to be behind bars. So there should be what's it called, probably doing community service. But those things necessary to monitor them are not in place. For instance, if you have people who go home and return, you know, to work, to do, at least you have things like trackers. You should have, you know, they shouldn't be bogged down by issues of surety and the like that you would normally find. So you find out that these things are not even in place at all. So you talk about there's a profound section in that law, which is section 12, particularly sub 4 to sub 12 of section 12, which provides that the correctional service, the authorities should monitor awaiting trial persons. And for those who have, they should also bring to the notice of the CJ, the Attorney General of State, and all whatnot. They should bring their notice anytime the correctional service is taken beyond its capacity. And where nothing is done, they should not admit inmates into that particular correctional service. Well, this is a very difficult section, but it's actually workable. But is it working? No, nothing is being done in this regard. So I think that, just like Mr. Akinlami said, the Administration of Criminal Justice Act was also passed in 2015. But up till now, we have been unable to see any tangible improvement. So I think beyond just speaking, beyond just passing the law, the government needs to do extra. And that extra we are yet to see. I don't even know where to start. For instance, we filed an action in court. The courts are not also helping matters. On this particular section 12, that was when the issue of electrocution happened in Kogi. This spurred us to file an action in court testing those provisions of this act. As we speak, judgment is yet to be delivered. More than about 1.5 years after we adopted. The judge was transferred, the crisis, the Jusun strike, and everything. In fact, I'm tired. And this is the position. So what we just have is a toothless bulldog. The law is there, but it is not okay.
Okay, well, the way I can feel the frustration, and the way you feel is the same way many Nigerians feel concerning these issues, especially when laws are made and promises are made, and people are still waiting with all hope that something should change in that regard. Daniel, there's the call for the use of technology. Ahmed just used the word, now I'm tired. Nigerians feel the same way. So if the foundational things that were supposed to be in the books, we're supposed to provide this, you're supposed to increase this capacity, you're supposed to upgrade this, are not even there. How much more the use of technology where we're supposed to, digitize the entire prison system?
Well, where we are today, we have no choice than to deploy more technology to safeguard first and to enhance the process. I notice now there is a robust biometric data for the inmates. So, and Minister of Interior was also talking about the fact that many of those who escaped can be tracked. And they can't even go to any country. They can't do any activity. They can't do business. So they will be tracked. But we don't need to wait now for this incident to reoccur again. First, there is a need to improve on the security around our correctional centers. It's very urgent and important. And then secondly, we should begin to deploy more technology to enhance the security, like what Oyo State Governor just provided in support to that center in Oyo State, the provision of CCTV. It's even surprised that some of these centers don't even have CCTV. So we need to also improve on the surveillance, and a robust one, not the one that can just be hacked or be broken into when an attack happens. A robust one that will be able to track movement and activities around the center. And thirdly, we should also improve on intelligence gathering. Some of these things can be prevented before they take place. So the intelligence gathering around the centers, activities around the inmates, and even life outside the centers is very vital in stopping this. But where we are today is inevitable. We must deploy technology, especially for some of the activities and the things going on inside our centers. Let me make a reference to a particular case of one man. His name is Collins Kanu. This man was arrested in 1993 and charged for murder. But unfortunately, he was on a waiting trial for 13 years before the prosecution started. And when the prosecution ended, he was sentenced to death. So he was on death row for another 13 years before the case could get to Supreme Court. You know what happened at the end? After 26 years that he was charged, Supreme Court set him free from the case of the murder because there was not enough evidence. There are so many people in our prison with this kind of story. 26 years of his life wasted. And that is where the problem is. We have almost about 65% of our inmates now in all our correctional centers on a waiting trial. They have not been taken to court. And the larger part of this delay is caused by the Ministry of Justice, the Correctional Service, and the Nigerian Police. So whatever we have to deploy as technology must begin to fast track the process now. Because the case where you have a prison center that's supposed to accommodate 1,000, housing about 5,000 inmates.
And counting. Because every day we still hear of people taken in.
The center needs to work more on the technology first that will fast track these cases. We need to decongest the prisons. I've been saying this for years. Now we have some reforms in the past few years, new laws, But these laws are also not being acted on. The
But,
problem is...
I wonder how possible that is when lawyers and judges have so much on their hands to do. In fact, there are backlog of cases where they're trying to keep afloat with all of those. Do we have to create more courts to be able to attend to that, or how was the service? How do you think that can be done?
The box is top on the table of the administrators. There are people in charge of these centers. There are stakeholders in the administration of criminal justice. We have the Ministry of Justice, the Office of the Attorney General. We have Nigeria Correctional Center. We have the Nigerian Police. And there are still other stakeholders too. You know, what we are talking about now is the Correctional Center. There are inmates that are outside our Correctional Center. We are not even talking about those ones. There are inmates in the cell of DSS. There are inmates even in the police cell.
In the EFCC?
Yes, EFCC. And even some with the military. So we are just talking about the awaiting trial inmates now. So there is a need for us to begin to have sound administrators to man all these specialized areas that have to handle administration of criminal justice, including the correctional centers.
Let me bring Ahmed to add a voice to this. Ahmed, the issue of trying to speed up the justice system where we can decongest the prisons. This has become a Herculean task in the last decades. I wonder what should be suggested here, or what you suggest here. Maybe you could advise or speak to that effect, because the point there is, I wonder whether we need more courts or more lawyers, or how would it be handled?
Yes, definitely there's a need to, first and foremost, we need to do a sort of segmenting these cases. There are cases that should not even take long, that have no business being in courts at all in the first place. So there is a need to monitor these gateways. And I think that at some point at the SCID fancy in Lagos State, I knew they were doing something like this, and where there is like a sieving system where you sieve cases. If that is done, then the cases that eventually even get to court will be very, very minimal. So secondly is that there's actually need for more hands. I think the judges are overworked, and the supervision of what goes on in the magistrate courts and in the high courts need to be upped. So where a case stays in a particular court, there are provisions in African criminal justice laws of various states that seeks to give the magistrate the powers to release accused persons or defendants when there are no credible evidence against them. But unfortunately, these particular provisions are not used. So normally, once a case gets to a magistrate, the magistrate, if it is a case that has a capital offense, so the magistrate would remand the person, and there will be a return in like a month where the magistrate would look at the case and release the person where there is no evidence, or where the prosecution appears not to be doing what they ought to do. And there is another addition, but there is no extension beyond that 60 days, except in very minimal cases. But unfortunately, this particular provision is not used. So you find somebody in prison spending 14 years awaiting trial. So also is the fact that there is actually need for more judges. There is need for more magistrates. There is need for more courts. And there is need for innovation. I know a friend of mine did something which they call justice clock. And I know that some states have started adopting this justice clock, where cases are monitored from the entry point. So there is like it's like more or less like an app that monitors these cases. So if we can adopt these approaches, I think it will go a long way in solving these issues we have. So I think these are some of the things that we need to do to ensure that our cases are sped up. And there is also, of course, the plea bargain is now being used, ensuring that suspects who admit to committing offenses early enough are given a kind of a reprieve where they are able to get lighter sentences because they have decided not to stress the state. So these are some of the things that needs to be done. But more than that is actually the issue of monitoring, proper monitoring of processes that gets to court. And I think if this is done, we are going to move faster and ensure there is faster dispensation of justice. When we say awaiting trial, it is not the case that those who are awaiting trial do not go to court. In fact, the worst of most of these cases are actually people who go to court. But they go to court for years without any visible results. And I think one of the things that we need to pay attention to in ensuring that we speed up the justice process. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. The issue of the justice clock, I believe that is something that should be adopted. Thank you, Ahmed Aditola Kazim, for your time on the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Now, Dan, let's before I let you go, going forward, because we've identified some of the challenges. All of these things need money. In fact, most of them need money. And as it is, at a time like this where Nigeria is talking about challenges with shortage of funds, finances for social infrastructure and all of that, what do you advise in a situation like this?
Well, I think to start with, like my colleague said, we must begin to look at the way to decongest. Let's look at different avenues, even plea bargain and some of these light cases that shouldn't even get the inmates to be in the prison in the first instance. So let's work around some of these provisions in the law to decongest. Those who shouldn't be there at all should be taken out and be released. And I think we are facing the same challenge that affects every sector in Nigeria. If you look around, the educational sector is also suffering too. The health sector is suffering. I could remember maybe a year or 2 years budget go about the correctional center, and inmates was budgeted for about 450 naira per day. So let's assume that 450 naira they're going to have their daily upkeep, feeding and all those things. So we have a long way to go by that budget. I think at some point the correctional service had about 8 billion to 10 billion as a national budget.
Budgetary allocation.
So you can see where we are.
Yeah.
The service actually need proper funding. And the facilities, the infrastructure are nothing to write home about. But to even fast track the administration of criminal justice to get some of these cases to court quickly dismissed, we need to also spend money to open up more channels, have more magistrate courts and all those things. I
agree, because some of the prisons are as old as close to 70, 100 years and all of that. Thank you very much, Dana Kinlami, for coming on the program. Really appreciate you. Thank you.